Okay. Right off the bat, I think the original Pet Cemetery is probably better than this rigid knockoff than we have here. Do I think either movies are perfect? No, but I think they're both enjoyable in their own merits. I think they also share some of the same problems as well. I think they both have problems with pacing. I think they both can get a little bit boring. I think the acting doesn't exactly convey enough emotions for us to feel exactly what the movie needs us to feel. And I think it's difficult to make an adaptation of a screenplay from a book, especially one by Stephen King, just because, he's a good writer. He's good at conveying emotion with the way he writes, and sometimes that's hard to get across in the form of a movie. I mean, it happens. It's not always to the fault of the screenwriters, but I think in this case it definitely hinders the movie a great amount. So I guess we'll get into now the Pet Sematary 2019, and then we'll talk about the original and basically my final thoughts and everything. Pet Sematary 2019 had this glorious effect of simultaneously putting me to sleep and waking me up again just to annoy me. What I mean by this is, well, the movie itself was pretty boring. The pacing of the movie was just so long and drawn out, but at the same time, these jump scares would pop up seemingly out of nowhere because there was no tension built up leading to it. Our characters were pretty unlikable too, and I actually kind of enjoy Jason Clarke, our main actor. I think he has an interesting filmography, but in this movie his character is just kind of dumb. Not that that's to his fault, I mean, he was written like that, but the decision making behind our main character doesn't really make sense because we have no real emotional buildup or apparent strain that we can see in his character's development. In the original, we follow the mental strain of our main character and we can believe through the things that happen to him that he's losing his mind in a sense. This dead man comes to visit him in these waking nightmares, and at the same time his son passes away. It's a whole plate of terrible things that just stack up on this man's conscience, and it's very believable through his reactions that he's losing it. The character development also makes it more believable as to why he'd succumb to using the pet cemetery, as much as he does despite knowing of the possible repercussions. In our remake, there's not really much from the performance of Louis Creed that makes us believe that he'd forgo his previous judgments and values to use the pet cemetery. It should be said that in this movie, he's even more anti-believing in the afterlife than the original, which makes it even less believable that he wouldn't have any qualms with ditching his previous thoughts on the pet cemetery. Pet Sematary Remake also doesn't do very much justice to the original story. The side plot reimaginations we get are somewhat interesting because of the way we can now create more realistic and horror-inducing images with effects and CGI, but that's about all there is to them. They're not really connected to the main story, and that's a problem I have with the original as well. We have this side plot of Rachel Creed's sister, Zelda, and she's got this worn out back, she can't walk, she's really spooky and scary in the way that she looks, but it doesn't really connect to the pet cemetery. It kind of connects to the overlying theme of death, and I guess it kind of makes sense that we would be introduced to it because it talks about death, I guess. But it's only in my opinion, I think it's only really there so that we can have this scary subplot that's only scary because of the sake of having these images that create fear. I don't think they really have anything to do with trying to make the pet cemetery scary, which is a problem that I kind of have that kind of takes a lot of score off the movie. I think it's just kind of lazy writing, so to speak, because it doesn't really have anything to do with, the overall pet cemetery. And another thing, we have this really boring color palette of dark grays and blacks that's indicative of every lazy horror movie that isn't trying in the right ways to create fear. You don't need to make everything dark and kind of gray and kind of hard to see to kind of bring out these moods and tones of sadness and guilt. I mean, you can use really you can use bold colors and not be fearful of not being able to bring fear into your audience. That's just my opinion though. We also get scary spooky walking through cursed wood scenes and scary spooky obligatory jump scares. They're just more frustrating than anything else. From the first couple minutes of the movie, we are already subjected to a loud truck barreling down a street. Do directors know that you don't have to startle us in order to tell us that a presented idea is going to be reincorporated within the film later? Or do you just think that our brains are as dead as these zombies in the movie? Or do you just not trust us? Be honest, please. You do a fine job of reincorporating the line about Ellie in the beginning of the movie into a scene in the near end. When Louis Creed brings his daughter Ellie to the front of the house, he introduces it to her by saying, "This whole place is the new domain of Elephant, the Great and Terrible." And in one of the last scenes, Rachel Creed has come back to the house to meet Louis, and he begins to tell her about what happened to Ellie. And as he says this, her name to introduce her, she finishes her title by saying, "The Great and Terrible." I think this was a fantastic callback and really adds a lot of tension and personality to this new undead Ellie character. I think it also should be said that in the book, this title, The Great and Terrible, is also used a lot in reference to Rachel Creed's sister, Zelda. I think it definitely made a great scene. It was probably my favorite scene of the entire movie. Besides the over-the-top jump scares and boring pace of the movie, I have one final grievance with this remake, and that is the new Victor Pascal. I don't like how serious he is, and I don't like how he doesn't add an interesting flavor to the movie. He's boring. In the original 1989 version, Victor Pascal is neither malign or benevolent spirit. He's a slightly more sympathetic version of the Wendigo. During the movie, we can see him delivering help to Rachel, and even has this somewhat comedic effect in the way that he delivers it. Some people argue that his character is out of place and brings down the overall scary mood of the movie, and I'd have to say that I greatly disagree. I'd say the original's Victor Pascal is a lot more beneficial to the movie in a sense that he adds this overall unsettling mood with how nonchalant he is and with his comedic delivery. In spite of the ominous events that are taking place within the movie, Victor Pascal is taking pleasure out of what is happening and cracking a sense of humor that is somewhat disturbing. Why is he able to crack smiles while all these horrible things are happening? I think his nature of being omniscient also shows through his comedic effects. It's almost as if he's laughing at Rachel's feeble attempts to stop the inevitable. Our remake Victor Pascal doesn't offer any personality that adds an interesting and thought-provoking mood to the movie, and his character ends up being kind of overlapped and pretty much forgotten about throughout the course of events with the movie. The way his voice projects and the way he jump scares the audience just makes the movie seem even more lame, in my opinion. I think the movie's already trying to take itself too seriously, and this boring Victor Pascal just adds more to that. I think when you have this Victor Pascal that doesn't really serve any other purpose than just being like scary and having this ominous tone to him, I think that's too much. I think it's already going to get drowned out by these already other things that are happening in the movie. Like, they have this Zelda plot that's already pretty, it's already pretty gruesome in and of itself, and it's already made to kind of make us have these feelings of like guilt and fear. And you have this Victor Pascal that's trying to bring out those themes and tones as well. And at the same time, we have our actual main plot about the pet cemetery and about these things that we know are going to happen later. Like, as the movie progresses, we know when the cat dies, since we have this kind of knowledge before about the trucks and these kids, you can put together that these kids are going to die as well. And if you've seen the original, you know that he's going to bring the kids back as well. So I think when you have all these themes already of trying to generate fear, already being a little bit unsuccessful, I might add, and you put in this character like Victor Pascal, he's going to get forgot about so easily. Like, he's just going to get overlapped. He's not important, and he's not doing anything that really serves a purpose to the movie. In the original, our Victor Pascal's he's a little bit more than that, He knows what's happening over what Louis Creed is doing. He's bringing back his kid from the dead, and at the same time, he's trying to help Rachel to stop him from doing that. I mean, he has this problem in his decision making because he wants to stop the pet cemetery. At the same time, he's kind of egging on Louis a little bit to use it. I think he's a bit more of an interesting character, and I think at the same time he delivers an interesting layer to the movie in the sense of the tone and the kind of emotions that are brought out. I don't think he gets forgotten about, which is why I kind of like him more. I really like him more than the remake. So, in the end, I think this movie falls victim to the many, many horror movie tropes that have been plaguing the horror industry as of this late era of filmmaking. I think the acting from our main protagonists were a little bit better. I think the child acting was pretty decent. The little kid acting was definitely pretty scuffed, but I mean, what can you do? I mean, the kid looks cute, you're already going to feel bad when he dies. I mean, I think he did his job fine. They butchered my beloved Victor Pascal, and for that, I must sentence this movie to the shadow realm of disappointing movie remakes. I can't say I could send this movie to the realm of bad movie remakes, because I can't say this movie was awful. There were enjoyable aspects that I would say were enough to make me not regret buying a movie ticket. However, it definitely missed a lot of marks, and I don't think it really did justice to the original. And again, is the original perfect? No, it has its problems, but I think it's an enjoyable movie. I think it's definitely a product of, a different timeline, a different culture. I said that in the beginning as well. And I think these two movies, the original and remake, are definitely made for different people enjoying different types of horror movies, and I think that's fine as well. I am going to give it a 5 out of 10 overall, because I enjoy that Ellie the Great and Terrible scenes far too much for me to give it anything lower. To give it anything higher, I think it would have to really improve on some of the things that the original did not very well. I think our Judd here was kind of lame. He didn't even really have that main accent. And you guys are gonna harp on me for why does it matter if he has a main accent? Because I think the accent is important because it kind of makes our characters seem like they're even more out of place. They didn't improve on the pacing issues. I found myself kind of wondering how long this movie's gonna keep going on for. It was just too long. Both movies are kind of too long, and they have this bad pacing problem. So in the remake, it kind of doesn't improve on any of the other factors that it didn't do well on. Of course, I'm not going to give it a better score. What would I give the original? I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10, just because I really don't like the stupid horror movie tropes that are in this movie. I don't like the jump scares. I don't like that we can't have a reincorporated idea within a horror movie that doesn't have to make us feel startled. I hate that there's no subtlety within these movies anymore. And that is all I had for this review. So, if you're on the fence about seeing this movie, I'd say give it a shot. You may enjoy things that I particularly didn't. It may very well be worth your money to you. And I would definitely give the original a shot too. I think they're both good movies in their own merits, as I said before. So, yeah. Go watch Semetary. See you.